Today is the second day of the November 86 retreat. Somebody said, one hears it said a lot, actually over and over again, that the me, the I, the ego, is nothing but thought, images, remembrances, past experiences. But sometimes in hearing that, it just seems that this is explaining something with words and not getting at the core of this deep-seated feeling of me. Which, as this deep-seated feeling and conviction, doesn't seem to have something to do with thoughts only, with memories only. So, can we use this morning's talk, to look at this me? Which is the common problem of all of us. No matter how old we are, what training we've gone through, what culture or class we have been raised in, what race or nationality we belong to, what religion or ideology. The way the brain is programmed to think always starts, what is the origin? Asks, what is the origin? How did it all start? Because one can ask at this point, is the me something that is learned? Or does it come with the new baby? Is it a common inheritance that goes beyond what is picked up and learned from the environment and exposure to the environment? Having recently observed little children through the growth of the family, visiting, one sees this tremendous drive and push and energy in a new little organism and a growing little organism to get what it wants, what it needs. I don't know what the difference is, where it starts. Wanting, the word maybe, using it for when there's already a thought of something, and needing, the physiological need. How soon is there the image of the breast in the little baby? When it's not there. The brain is already there. I think in in its fullness. That baby, the baby's brain doesn't grow, if I'm correct. And its capacity to form images is there from the beginning. Wanting, and whatever is in the small repertoire of a tiny baby, using expressions to get what it wants or what it needs. Crying for the baby being almost the only thing in the repertoire. Being born itself must be, I personally don't remember it, some people say they do, an enormous change and traumatic process. The whole breathing changes from having no air, no breathing as we do it and we're outside of the uterus to breathing air, and something has to be cleared. A lot of mucus in the chest. The change from warmth, softness, moisture, to something drier, harder, colder, not containing, but open, without the immediacy of support. Gasping for air. I know 2 little children who were recently born with some constrictor on the throat from the umbilical cord, blue in the face, having to be in the oxygen tent to get air. Already being born is a matter of life and death. And enormous danger of not pulling it through. And then the need to feed, to get to the breast or the bottle in many cases these days. And more than the need for food, there's the need for warmth and touch. Being held, being contained, and therefore feel safe again as it was in the uterus. We've all gone through that, each one of us. How this need was fulfilled may have varied for each one of us. The best mother, devoted to her child, is not always there. She can't be there always. Maybe for the first child, almost always. Some mothers in certain tribes, and here we have brought out this kangaroo bag where the baby is close to the chest and can easily be nursed. So for some first children, the breast may be there most of the time, but not always. The mother may be ill or away, or there is a second child. So what is needed is not there. What is cried for does not come. Actually, this has struck me since seeing babies on breasts or bottles, that the expression of a baby feeding is so common. They all look alike, and their deep satisfaction as something that comes over the whole face, that is alike in all feeding children, babies. And it is not the ordinary look which sort of gazes out to get this or that. It's not a looking out, it is, well, I think all of us have seen it. It's very, very touching, it's very moving inwardly. And likewise, a little child crying for his mother or her mother is one of the most heart-wrenching things to see. I don't mean when the mother is just a few feet away getting ready or getting the bottle warm, but crying for a mother who isn't there. For whatever reason. And all of us have been these babies, these little children who have had satisfaction to different degrees, maybe very little, maybe a lot, and yet all of us had this wanting the warmth, wanting the being held, the affection, the touch, the food, and not getting it. Not at the moment where it is needed, and with that is there an imprint in the brain, a remembrance of that, even before words were known and used. Remembrance of comfort, of satisfaction, of delight, of goodness, things being all right, and the opposite, which is at that stage non-verbal, and yet there can already be images. There certainly are remembrances. Remembrance does not necessarily mean verbal remembrance, intellectual remembrance, but remembrance of physical feelings is also recorded in the brain, in the chips there, the cells. Soon after we're born, we get a name. It has very practical reasons, so that when we're called or addressed, we learn to answer to that name and not someone else. And yet, how are we called? What is the tone of voice with which our name is called out or spoken or said? It has a wide variety. It can be a caressing sound, loving, affectionate, connected with this coziness of being held and fondled and cuddled. And it can be out of the gamut of our emotions: anger, reproach, frustration, fault-finding, pointing a finger. All is just in the way our name is called or said by the mother and father, brothers and sisters. So, at first, we probably learn to associate the name with this physique, with this organism, with this body. The name comes to be identified with the body. We learn to walk when we're called, or crawl, or scramble somehow or other. Particularly when it's an alluring call promising something nice. Little children can hear that already, maybe better than we. And yet what are we but little children? In what way have we grown up other than physically? And intellectually. Intellectually meaning having accumulated enormous amounts of knowledge. So the name is associated with the body and the sound of the name, how it's called, how we're addressed, also is remembered. If we're addressed in a loving, friendly, promising way, warm, there is this feeling of being lovable. Also a pleasure to the mother or father. One feels that very early, when one is a pleasure to the mother and to the father, because then good things keep coming, a cycle is established. I'm a pleasure to him or her, and good things come this way. And that is remembered. That is remembered. Likewise, if we're reprimanded, shouted at, scolded, addressed in a frustrating voice, that image too is deposited of being bad, not lovable, frustrating, annoying, upsetting to the parent. And that is remembered, together with the voice of the name and the looks of the face and the face of the parent. I don't think we listen, children listen so much to the word it's said, to the meaning of the word, but to the sound and to the eyes. Look at the eyes. When there's a combat going on between child and mother or father, which happens so often, sort of a testing of wills, one will notice the child doesn't listen to the whole barrage of words. They're so inconsistent, the way we deal and bargain and threaten our children. But the child looks at the eyes. When does the parent really become angry and a threat? Not what he or she says. The sound of the voice and the looks of the eyes. Child learns to look at the eyes to see whether approval, love, satisfaction is coming or danger. Because eventually the verbal becomes more important and takes over. We're told what we are. good, clever, intelligent, better, then the comparisons come in when there are other children, or even if there are not other children. One is compared to other children. The one up the street who is so much more obedient comes home in time for lunch, but you don't. I think we mentioned yesterday, and it's struck me being with families, again with little children, living with them for a while, how much children are told, don't do this, this you can't do, no to this and that. It just, it's all day long. That's what we call bringing up a child. Letting him or her know what's right and wrong. And of course, the more complicated our household gets, just completely apart from our own idiosyncrasies and upbringing, the more no's there are, the more complicated things that could be wrecked. So it's no wonder that from that alone all of us grow up with a deep-seated sense of inferiority as compared to the giants who know everything, who can do everything, and who can mete out reward and punishment. Feelings of inadequacy, feelings of unlovedness, and a tremendous dependency on those who do mete out reward and punishment. Learning to conform, to be rewarded, learning to obey in order not to be punished. And all the alternate behaviors of getting attention through naughty behavior. And the image of being the naughty child becoming identified with that. Having heard it so often, by those who know, by those upon whom our life depends, and who have images of us. Of course, we form images of ourselves in this situation. A father who has the image of his son or daughter or mother, we don't have to separate this. It runs through the gender, of being very promising in intellect, in the drive to achieve. The satisfaction of this parent is not lost on the child. There's a tremendous impetus to continue in satisfying the father and the mother through achieving, learning. And so it is with being good, being nice. Somebody just recently said to me, for the first time I hear myself being nice, saying nice things which have nothing to do with the way I feel. Why am I doing that? And it was readily seen that there is a very strong image of being nice and having to live up to that. One becomes so identified with these images. They are me. We're told how we are from the beginning. We're talked about in our presence. I remember my parents talking about me and picking it up and living up to it. There's also the urge to be interesting to one's parents or to others. How one is looked at by others. There's this time when parents accompany their children all the time, almost all the time, to the market, to the doctor's office. And I remember my mother watching very carefully how people looked at me and getting her satisfaction out of it. If people sort of looked kindly or interested on this little child. I felt this dynamism, this interconnectedness. Walking in the summertime, we used to go on vacation into a hotel for 5 weeks. And there were 3 meals a day in this public dining room. And of course, we were dressed at our very best. Braids and little ribbons in each braid. And then mother watching how all the guests looked upon these cute 3 little children. And the satisfaction of parading in front of others who look with interest and love and kindness and admiration upon one. So there's this self-consciousness which emerges through the satisfaction that comes from seeing how others look at one. And I'm right now talking about positive attitudes. The same goes for if one is not looked at. If parents are embarrassed about how one looks as one enters a public place. Image. Identification with the image. This is me. When the parents are out of the picture, then directly, how do people look at me? Are they attracted to me? If a person is attracted to one, doesn't this give a tremendous boost to the self-image? We think we're becoming interested in another person, but if one looks very carefully and dispassionately, isn't one just as interested or much more interested in the fact that this person is attracted to me? That makes that person attractive to me. The boost, the affirmation of the self-image. One can feel warmth and lovedness through being paid attention to, even if one is not taken into the arms. That one can imagine. And this satisfaction, this potential satisfaction is insatiable. It never seems to have enough, or does it? Can it? Not until one sees this whole mechanism. Not unless one sees that is seen. This is where I think the whole problem comes in relationship. Most of the time becoming married because of this attraction. Playing into this is that the mate may remind one of one's first comforting person, one's father or mother, or an older brother or an older sister. That image is there as the wellspring of comfort and love, take security, being taken care ofness. So someone looks like that or acts like that, and all one's wanting goes out to that person. Wanting to be loved by that person and possessed by that person, and wanting to possess that person, keeping it now. Keeping him or her. Mother became more and more unreliable. Father. So here in the mating scene, in the mating thing, one can replay this whole thing and try to make it more secure, lasting. The breast that doesn't go away. So why aren't our relationships lasting? Which they aren't, most of the time. Is it because when they're based on this wanting and seeking and imagery, they can't be? Because the person whom one is attracted to and one wants to be with, keep, possess forever, a person has the same needs. Being in need of being loved and given security, one wants it from someone who is in need of love and being given security. It's like, to put it very starkly, it's not completely like that, but very much so, two empty wells getting together to get water. Maybe there's some water one will give, but one will give it in return for water, which one needs so much for one feels for surviving happily. And the eyes are still roving, looking for being attracted, and being attracted to whom one is attracted, to whom one is attractive, being attracted to that person. And all the imagery, all the fantasy. It never dries up, that fantasy maker in the brain. Drawing on all the remembered experiences of the physical organism. Changing relationships to find that love which is not here If it was here, it wouldn't be sought after outside. It wouldn't. Why would it be? It doesn't have to seek what's there. But self-image is not love. Other image is not love. It can stir and trigger memories of good feelings of security or taken care ofness, pleasurable physical sensations. But that's not love. Self-image and other image are just images. They can't love. They can only want and fear and go after and get used to and tire and look for new. Remember, we were looking at that even in the little baby, there was not satisfaction all the time. There was pain and loss, feeling of loss, abandonment, when the mother wasn't there, right from the start. And the imprint of that, the remembrance of it. Is when still today trying to make up for that loss with having found new satisfactions. That's one thing in which we're not little children. There's sexuality, although little children have sexuality too. Not to the extent and degree as adults. A newfound pleasure, to be gone after, to be try to possess and keep and repeat. And yet it doesn't work either, completely. Something is left wanting. Dry, hungry, greedy. What is that? As long as one doesn't ask the question, one goes after the more. The different. How long will we do it? Maybe all our life. Some people at the time of death say, I'm not sorry to die, I had a full life. Full of experiences. Remember the first evening we were wondering here, all of us together, what is wanting? It's a good word, wanting, because it expresses both. Wanting something and feeling wanting something, lacking something. will when that comes up, when that's there in its full momentum, in its full power, will one go after the images and memories that have satisfied wanting in the past, or may promise a better, fuller, more pleasurable satisfaction in the future? Then one will not plumb this wanting. Then the show goes on. Maybe this sounds like disparaging. I didn't mean it that way. This looking is not evaluative. Trying to look at how we live in wanting and the incredible sorrow and pain that comes from wanting. With some pleasures thrown in here and there. What is wanting? Is this an inevitable, natural human state? Wanting and being therefore the wellspring of all of our creativity and ingenuity and drive to go out and get maybe not a woman or a man, but a career or excellence in a profession. In art, in sports. This is what is taught. Remember, I don't know what is taught today in psychology. When I took psychology, it was taught that the basic anxiety in a human being is the wellspring of his and her progress. The deduction at the time was because there's not enough achievement anxiety in the black race. This theory was advanced by a black man. Therefore, there is not this achievement and drive. So how can we instill anxiety? It sounds ridiculous, but it was a very well accepted and revolutionary theory in social psychology when I went to school in the 50s. And one can look in oneself at what spurs one on to get, to achieve, to attain. We've all been through it, being spurred on to attain enlightenment. The promise of not another breast, but bliss, clarity, enlightenment, which is the same wanting to settle, wanting, lack, a way to wholeness or to, I don't know what we used to call it. Doesn't matter. One person mentioned this to me. Actually, not just one person. And it's being mentioned all the time. Working here, when I first came, or worked at another center and then came here, at first there was a tremendous passion still to get this enlightenment, to become a Buddha or whatever. And now I seem so passionless. I feel a passionlessness. Is this good or bad? I don't know. What is wanting? What is its source? Does it have a source? Does it have a source? Not postulate one. Then we're back with the beginning question. I hear this said over and over. This is this, and just giving different words for something that I feel very strongly, but can't understand. Is the sense of me, this deep sense of me, this deep conviction that I am me, is that inevitably connected with wanting? Not theorize about it, but watch it. And is this deep-seated conviction feeling of being me, is it any other than image and remembrance? And wanting? And fearing? Fearing for the security and safe continuity of this image, or this bunch of images. It's one thing we haven't talked about yet. The self-image wants to continue. The brain makes it possible in human beings, the very elaborate brain, more elaborate than any brain that any animal has, makes it possible to imagine one's own continuity as an image. How the image has been formed, we've looked at. And we can look at it any time. New images form all the time, so we can see the origin of an image anytime. And the brain making it possible to visualize or think out the continuity of this me. And the attachment to that continuity as me, with all that it calls its own, feels as its own, its family, possessions, capacities, and so forth. Why do we want to continue? I think we'll talk about that in greater depth another time. One thing that just comes to mind that I wanted to say at the time of looking at how images start forming in little children. Because all of us suffer from this feeling at times, for some people all the time, some people say every morning I wake up, of somehow or other being guilty, having done something wrong or being bad. Just recently, I observed a scene. A little child was playing on her mother's lap. She hadn't eaten all her food, but she wanted to sit on her mother's lap and was in the presence of relatives who were the hosts. And now the little child was playing on her mother's lap with a cup of water, spilling some in drops. And then pouring, and all kinds of things had already gone on with not eating the food that was there, but there was among the relatives a controlled silence, or I don't know what to call it, but it was electric, the air was electric. And then the little child poured the water into a precious wine in the mother's glass, with which the host had it. The mother hadn't done anything with the child, and that I think was also annoying the host. And he took quite vehemently, took the cup, the plastic cup, away from the child and scolded. All situated in an incredibly abrupt way. It had been building up. That's when we don't say something, then eventually we explode. We have this image of being a good father, a good grandparent, or a good uncle, or whatever, husband, wife, and hold to that image for dear life and keep all the stops in, and suddenly, no more, the last finishing straw, and there's the explosion, and then there's trauma. In that child there was trauma. She cried convulsively for 45 minutes or so. Not right away. It was a real shock. She just looked into the eyes of the angry person. And then this convulsion set in. Is it from such experiences which all of us have gone through, this sudden eruption of an angry parent? And we're not right now looking at the side of the parent. We're not condemning that parent. One knows how one wants to be patient and doesn't want to scold and wants to go along with it, and then suddenly our own conditioning breaks through. Enough is enough. This child is being spoiled. Somebody has to tell her or him what's right and wrong, and then the explosive punishment and scolding. We've all been through that. We've done it to others and we've received it. But as the recipient, has there been this trace left, this memory of being wrong and not knowing why? Not doubting it. That little child wasn't doubting, it was just recipient of shock and the memory of that. And another aspect of the trace that's left, that The next day, on her mother's arm, with a little cup of water in her hand, something I've never seen her do before, she deliberately, slowly emptied that cup on the rug. I say deliberately. It wasn't just spilled by mistake. And the eyes were roving. And the relative who had exploded the day before knew better not to say anything. It's all there. At age 2.5, maybe earlier. And it's still there at age, you name it. Will memories continue to seek their satisfaction and never be satisfied because the memory remains? Or does it? Does it have to? That's what we're asking here. Whether a human being needs inevitably to be run by memory. Verbal and non-verbal, physical, mental, intellectual, organismic. I think that the memory that keeps this organism going physically, without that we'd be dead. We're not talking about that. We're talking about psychological memory. And is awareness memory, or is awareness something new which sheds light and yet is not part of what is seen? That too we will talk about some other time. Which doesn't mean one has to wait till it's talked about. Of course not. We will end here for today.